Hello, welcome to Winning on Wednesday. My name is Juan Vides, and I'm the founder of Winning on Wednesday. Winning on Wednesday is a platform that meets every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And the purpose is simply to get to know people. And I always say people do business who they know, like, and trust. And today I have my friend Ethan. How you doing, Ethan?
I'm fantastic,
Good
Juan.
chance.
Thanks for having me.
Good, good. I was so excited to have you here, and I'm really happy when you told me that you wanted to do this. I was really excited. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thanks for having me, Juan. I would say that I'm a performance and productivity coach. And what that means is I'm really passionate about working with organizations to help them unleash their people's untapped potential. And I do it three ways. I work with them to do employee training and development, executive team coaching, whether it's one-on-one or team-based. And the last thing I do, Juan, is consulting with organizations, usually around something very specific, culture transformation. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow, wow. Well, thank you. So tell us, where did it all begin? Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
Ooh. So for those who are not aware, I'll cut it off by just saying New York City. But anybody who's familiar with New York City and you know the five boroughs, I'll say in between Manhattan and in between Queens is this little river called the East River. And in that river is an island called Roosevelt Island. And you may remember it has an aerial tramway.
Yep.
And that's where I grew up in the mid
Wow.
70s.
Wow. So that must have been, how was that like growing up?
It was wild. There was nobody there. Literally, my first year was like Little House on the Prairie. In school, we had third grade to ninth grade in one classroom, no cars, no dogs. And it was an amazing way to grow up in the middle of New York City. It was amazing.
Wow, wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now they have that for concerts, right? The island, they
Oh
have
yeah, they
concerts and stuff
have
like.
well they just relatively, recently a while back they put a train that went between Manhattan and Queens and stopped there. Um, there's research and development centers that are popping up all over the place. There's high-end housing. It's just, but when I grew up, it was just really kind of like the wild, wild west. It was just a great way to grow up.
So tell us, did when you were a kid, what did you want to be? Did you have any ideas of like what like any professions? Any? I mean,
I don't know, a profession, but I've always been pretty active in sports. So, like any good New York City kid growing up, I wanted to be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, or I wanted to be first baseman for the New York Yankees. So,
wow, that's and any role models that you had?
well, yeah, I mean, there's a reason that I went through getting beaten up on a regular basis being a Cowboys fan. In the early 70s, I fell in love with the team and I really admired their coach, Tom Landry. The way he built that franchise, the way he recruited top talent players, the way he unleashed their untapped potential. He was a man's coach.
Wow. It's interesting that and you I'm sure you apply a lot of this stuff to the business world too, right? Like a lot of stuff that you learn from these people from, these coaches and stuff like that.
Oh,
It's like
yeah,
I'm trying to say you could there's a correlation with sports and business. You could there's that you could tie in with that. And
absolutely,
I know we
absolutely.
talk about culture. But what about hobbies or any interests?
I've always been active. So I played baseball growing up. I now play softball. I've always played tennis. I do weightlifting and really anything and everything to stay active here in New York City. So whenever I can get out, I do.
Have you gotten into the pickleball craze yet?
Oh, you know what? Unfortunately, I have no choice. I kind of have to. I have to. It's a rite of passage. My knees are going out, my hips are going out on me. But yeah, once you can't play tennis, you kind of just move to pickleball. So I've been doing that. Yeah,
Okay, so you made that transition already. Okay,
yeah, yeah.
got it, got it. All right. And what did you go to school for? What was your degree in, by the way?
My undergraduate degree was in communications and my MBA was in marketing. So I've always been fascinated with how you influence people and how you get them to behave a certain way, mostly through storytelling.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's always people are always fascinated by storytellings and it's like movies, right? Watching a movie.
Yeah.
Um and tell us about your real job when you graduated from college. What was that like? And that journey to where you are now?
Well, it was a really painful experience, leaving college and university and going into the real world, but it was formative in terms of it was a powerful first step along the journey that I'm still making today. So, when I graduated, I was in upstate New York for 2 years, wasn't happy, so I withdrew, got on a plane, flew out to California. Took a year off, worked full time, got my undergraduate degree. I was at Candlestick Park. The A's were playing the Giants in the World Series. The earthquake hit, and I said, I got to get out of here. So I got my degree, came back in 1990 and went into advertising in agencies. And that was pretty painful because you learn pretty quickly how little you're valued. Because the moment the account you worked on, when they chose a different agency, the agency laid everybody off except for one or two people, and it happened over and over again. So that was my first experience in corporate America.
Any notable things that you remember from that time? I mean, working with I'm sure you work with a lot of big people or anything like that. I mean, I know you're not. I don't know if you're allowed to say who you work with, but you're who have. But have you? What type of experience have you had with the agencies with that in the
Yeah.
90s?
Well, the experience was a really keen appreciation for the fact that organizations mostly lie when they're talking about their culture, when they tell stories around what they want to be known for. It's aspirational, meaning it may or may not have any basis in reality, but really the way to understand the heart and the soul of the organization is to go through its most important competitive advantage, its people. And that's why I think so many young people entering the workforce are so disillusioned, because they have expectations about what their career is going to be, but then they're not aware that they have to match their values and their beliefs with the actual culture of the organization. And so that's why I actually left New York, followed my girlfriend, now my wife, from New York to Washington, D.C., enrolled in an MBA program and got my MBA because I was mistakenly thinking that by going and getting an advanced degree, maybe I'd see the workforce a different way and have a different understanding and appreciation for what it meant to succeed.
Yeah, it's very interesting about that. It's I think it's also a level of maturity in a sense that it's not age maturity. It's more maturity in the sense of business maturity that you start understanding. You start seeing the same story, your experience. You start seeing things over and over, and you know when to say no, and that takes time to
Yeah.
build. You know, so
Yeah. And you
but
asked me about the journey, and
yeah,
you just nailed it. That was my kind of journey thereafter. I got my MBA, and then I spent 20 years in corporate
wow.
America, leading marketing organizations. And it was that maturity of realizing over and over again, organizations are really struggling with, they're still stuck in that 20th century,
Hmm.
shareholder value. But in the 21st century, that doesn't work anymore.
Nope.
With all these millennials and Gen Z,
Yes.
this one,
Yep.
organizations need to change to be more focused on stakeholder value. And they still haven't gotten the memo. So in my kind of next step of my journey, that's why I left corporate America.
Yeah, it's tough to work with that, and I just had an experience about that recently with a client of mine where they just didn't get it, and I'm like, wow, it's like you would think this everything was aligned, everything was aligned, and they just didn't get it, and at the end, I actually said no, politely said no, because after a while, after doing redoing the contract for the fifth time, I'm like,
Oh
that's
boy.
it, that's like that's a huge red flag. I was
5
like,
times.
5 times, I was like, nope, I'm done. We're done. But anyway, yeah. So at this point, I like to call the golden nugget time, right? The golden nugget time is where people, if you like to leave some valuable information that can help a business person or someone better their career,
Yeah.
are there any information that you'd like to leave behind or some samples you want to give us?
I can take, I love the question, Juan. Thanks. I really appreciate it. I can take 35 years of my professional career and my journey, and I can give two two nuggets of information if you'll allow me.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, so the first is I experience this, and I tell all of the people in my spheres of influence, find your passion, right? So whether you're starting out your career in your 60s and you're forced to make a transition, there's an intersection between there's what you really love to do and what you're really good at. Don't pursue either. pursue where they intersect. So find your passion is do what you love to do and you're really good at, and then you'll never work another day in your life. So that would be my first piece. My second piece is, and it's going to sound weird, but it's find your tribe. I mean, this is all about in a post-COVID 21st century world. Don't try to be something to everybody because you're just going to fail miserably. And I did this so many times, especially in my consulting world. Find the people who love what you do, who share your values, who really, really kind of act and think and are spiritually aligned the way you are. And if that's one out of every 100 people, cool. That's your tribe. And that's why I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to come on your program because I think we think the same way.
Absolutely, you have to be aligned with people, and that's that same frequency. And if so that sometimes the people don't understand that you try to go to a group or a tribe as you mentioned, and there's not that it's not that energy, but it's always the feeling, the energy and vibe if that person is going to want to do business with you or not, but
Yeah.
you can get a sense for it right away, but sometimes people try to force it, and I think that's the problem too when they try to force it because they want it to work. And sometimes I always say just let it happen naturally, organically, but I think sometimes people want that instant gratification, especially the younger one, and I was like that same way too, that I wanted like that. I wanted, why is this not working? Sometimes it takes years, sometimes, I have another quick story. I have another friend of mine who has become a client of mine, but it took about 15 years for him to be a client.
15,
Yeah.
1-5.
1-5. Yeah. I,
That's interesting.
yeah. No, well, he worked for a company and then, he retired and then he started his own company. So, but I knew him for 15 years, so he needed a website. So I said, okay,
But it
interesting.
took
15
that
years.
amount of time to and that's the thing, that's what I struggle with. And I love your story because it really resonates with me. People are thinking they're looking at each other like we're cash registers with limbs, right? They're all about the transaction, they're all about the sell. And this is why I hate networking, man, because it's all that artificial stuff you were talking about. I think when you build stronger relationships and you say, you know what, we'll get to know each other, and it may take a year or 15 years. But if there's ever an opportunity for us to help each other, we're going to be top of mind because we
A
took
hundred
the
percent.
time to invest. And I don't care if you're in your 20s or 60s, that's a skill that needs to be cultivated. And I learned that early on in my career because I was treated so poorly in corporate America for 20 years that I had to go out on my own to find my tribe.
Well, the same here. I created my own tribe, which is Winning on Wednesday. I don't know, most people know my backstory, but I ran for office. I went to politics. I did everything. But at the end of the day, I got a lot of resistance everywhere. So my thing is, you know what? You create your own tribe, so if you are not having successful anywhere else, sometimes you have to just look in within yourself and say, hey, maybe I have to do something myself,
Yep.
so that's exactly what I did because, hey, the truth of the matter is I can't change people, but the only thing I could do is
Cool.
change my position where I am in life, and I could change, and that's what exactly what I did with Winning on Wednesday. So
Yeah.
it's been going on 5 years now, and we have this great podcast show everybody listens to. I was just talking to a friend of mine who listens to this on. I do have a subscription, that people do listen to this every week. So like, he always says, "I will look forward to hearing to your show every Wednesday." So, we do have an audience, so which is great.
That
And
and that's really, I mean, just using different language, but he's a raving fan of what you do. And he's no, seriously, he's an apostle of winning on Wednesday. When
yeah,
somebody says to you, I go out of my way
hmm
to seek your episodes and
yep,
get my weekly wand
hmm
fix, right? That's what
it,
matters. And you may not reach the same way, 99 out of another
it,
100 people, but it's the one who you connect with. And that's why I mean, that's a big piece of when you
yep,
asked me before what I do, a big piece of my practice is culture transformation. Because if you don't have a great reputational brand as an organization,
yep.
you're gonna say silly things like there's a war on talent. No, there isn't. That's BS.
Yeah.
Organizations that have done what you just do with winning on Wednesday as an organization and build great cultures, they even in COVID, they were not struggling to get amazing talent. That's an excuse.
Yeah, yeah. The one other thing I have to say, that we've been successful, and it's just like anything in life, Consistency is key.
Yeah.
And if you're consistent with everything, you make it happen. Sometimes, listen, I was there where I had just thought about quitting, giving up. But it just what really helped me was the people, that
Yeah.
really kept help
Yeah.
me get me engaged. Their energy, their vibe. I would have a bad day. You know what? Go on winning on Wednesday. At the end of the meeting, I would feel like energized, so energized, ready to conquer the world because all these people, they could give positive energy, positive vibe in this culture. And that's where things happen. That's where the magic happens. When everybody comes aligned together and
Yep.
everybody's positive, you may have your one grape, if that sour grape in the bunch, but you always, you got to learn how to work with it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about culture, that's amazing. I would love to definitely. We could have a whole separate conversation on culture, but this is great. So tell us about any spheres of influence that you belong to, or any organizations that you have passion
So,
with.
and I love that question. Thank you. I'll answer it by giving a piece of advice only through my painful experience. There is a ton of networking groups, right? And I won't name the names, but you and I have talked about them. And that's what they do, networking. There's these artificially created platforms to bring strangers together, but there's no way to teach them how to dance. So for me, the groups I now belong in, there are groups. They are either fractional C-suite groups, they're business owner associations or groups, but they share two common attributes, right? The people like you who facilitate them are meaningfully intent on building relationships and connecting people meaningfully. So that's the first attribute. The second is when you're looking for groups, I would suggest when you're being strategic about your relationship cultivation, look for grown-ups. Look for people who are mature.
Yes.
I have a whole strategy on being strategic about finding the right groups, but trial and error. Attend a few. You were kind enough to let me on Winning on Wednesday as a guest for a
Yes.
few. I asked you to introduce me to a few of your best group
Yep.
members. Trial and error. You're going to kiss. Unfortunately, you and I both were talking about this. You're going to kiss a lot of frogs in your networking. But the goal is networking should lead to, if it's done right, those business relationship groups. So I do belong to a few, but I'm always testing. I'm always trial and error.
Yeah, and you know what I found sometimes some of these networking groups are closed. They're not open. In other words, they don't like to work together. There's no synergy.
Right.
And I'm always saying that, you could build bridges. There's no reason why you could build bridges. And there's other people that belong to multiple networking groups. I actually, when I have a member of mine say, "Hey, who do you, recommend?" I'll say Adrian's network, because I used to belong to Adrian's network, and
Yeah,
I
I know
know
her
some.
well. Yeah, I
So
know
so
her.
it's but you see, we all could play in the nights in the sandbox. There's room for everybody. So it's just, like you said, you have to find your tribe, and whatever fits well with, then that's what you want to go with,
Yeah, and you
So
can, by the way, to your point, you can connect different things. Like you use a great term, bridging. I take my philosophy about the tribe model seriously, and I take building relationships seriously. I created my own mastermind kind of group back in July, and it's now about 30 something people. We meet once a month. But the beauty of it is I get to coach them how to have the relationships, and it's not just once a month checking in. And that way, like you said, you're really building your own reputational brand. Everybody knows Juan, everybody knows Winning on Wednesday, and we look forward to it.
right, exactly. Wow. So tell us about your business. Tell us about what you actually do.
So yeah, I mentioned before in passing that I struggled in corporate America. No, in full transparency, I was downsized, right-sized, re-engineered so many times, Juan, because what I did for a living, marketing, in many organizations, they see HR marketing as cost centers and least valued. So my last day job, I headed up marketing for one of the country's largest cable operators here in New York City. I was there for 1 year. I grew their revenue because of all my initiatives, tapping into women and minority-run businesses here in New York City. I increased their revenue about 30%.
Oh,
My
wow.
reward was I was laid off because they were talking to another cable company about merging in advance of Verizon launching Fios here in New York. So they laid off tens of thousands of people. And Juan, that was my epiphany, my aha moment. And I said, never again. And I went out on my own in 2009. And so for going on 15 years, touch wood, I've been able to pursue my passion of helping organizations find their tribe, of creating amazing workplaces, investing in their employees, creating a great place that people who are rock stars want to come work in because they've heard about the culture and they want to be a part of that. So that's my practice. In kind of layman terms.
Okay, wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best contact for you?
Thanks. That's actually awesome. They can go to my website, thechazingroup.com. Chazin is Chazin, just like you see it. Or another place to go is I have a YouTube channel, which is a pretty cool platform. I've got about 500 videos, which is basically me showing organizations and individuals how I go about training and developing and coaching. And there's just a lot of kind of thought leadership content on getting your organization from controlling people and managing them to unleashing their people's untapped potential. That's everything I do. So those two ways, website or YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is the Chasing Group LLC.
Jason, okay. Well, thank you, Ethan. And if you'd like to be a member of Winning on Wednesday, just simply go to our website, www.winningonwednesday.com,
Yeah.
and click on the first time guest, and you could be our first guest. So thank you so much, and